Welcome to Empowering Chats with Susan Burrell. This is where we have deep, intimate conversations about self-empowerment and future existence. I am an intuitive healer and a light leader who has been called to activate other light leaders. So I'm curious, are you one of them? So by listening, lean in and see if you are ready to be that eternal potential you've been called to be. Using your bravery, your talent, your tenacity, can you be innovative and adventurous in order to activate your light and lead from that place? This is where we learn how to love ourselves from the inside out and love the whole world over and over again. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. I am trying to finally get over a cold, so I have a cough drop in my mouth. But today, I couldn't wait to talk to this amazing, beautiful woman who is already actively, has always been her entire life, but is now currently actively co-creating a new earth. I want to welcome Cynthia Rivard. Cynthia, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Susan. I'm delighted to be here and so looking forward to our conversation.
I am too. I got chills. I got chills. I got chills. So that always signals that there is some intuitive knowingness that is just presenting itself right now through us. So Cynthia's new book just came out, is called Hope, a New Era, which the hope, Cynthia, I got to say, was like, I got to get me some of that. My grandmother used to say, I got to get me some of that. Hope for a new era, turning the tide, love and leadership through turbulent times. And my understanding is this is first of a series of books you're writing.
That's correct.
Okay. So you guys, hope. Cynthia, I want to read one thing. I circled a bunch of stuff in your book, but let me read this at the beginning. When we discover the beauty of new perspectives, our world opens up. We develop more compassion and experience more peace and love. So let's talk about this idea of hope, new perspectives, and then eventually get to leadership, because that's also what's in your book.
Oh, fabulous. I love it. So first, I define hope as faith in action. So we need to have faith and trust in this bright future that God's promised us, or Spirit has promised us, and that is available. We need to have trust and faith and then take action. And it's through that action taking that we have hope and empowerment. And the more action we take, the more of those divine downloads come to us, right? Because that's what happens. You start moving and then all of a sudden it starts really flowing.
Right.
And we get into even more inspired, aligned action taking.
Well,
So that's
let's tease this out just a bit. Sorry, Cynthia, because a lot of people may not recognize that they are getting divine downloads. And your background has always been in leadership and more on a corporate trajectory, right?
yes.
But then you began to really listen to your clairvoyance, clair audio, clair everything. And you actually say that is something that we all have, but we have to, again, this is the action piece. We have to work towards it. We have to develop it. So share a little bit about your story as we move into taking action in trust and faith.
Absolutely. So I know now I was intentionally kept asleep for a very long time. I am on the more mature side of my life, and I started becoming curious about spirituality, but really understood nothing about it, and just started turning over the stones or following the breadcrumbs. And when I learned, so the first clair I developed was clairsentience. And, I just got this sense and this knowing in my body. And I didn't know that's what I was doing. And so a lot of people have intuitive knowing. I've heard you mention this already a few times. They have this knowing, but they don't recognize it as coming from divinity, as you mentioned. And claircognizance, which is the actual knowing, clear knowing, is what we all want to develop. And most of us have it at some point, but we don't trust it. Divinity frequently needs to push us out of our comfort zone for us to really follow our soul's path and purpose. And so we'll second guess ourselves when we get those inspired downloads and, well, that's crazy. I can't do that. Or, well, I'll think about that later, maybe down the road. I'm very busy now. And all these different types of resistance can come up for us. So when you become intentional about developing your knowing, so you know that you're in communication with divinity, and that's all spiritual awakening is. This is what was shared with me. It's actually, and I didn't know it happened when it happened with me because, I was just curious and I kept asking questions and finally came to be told that I was channeling and, this is spiritual awakening when you develop that receiving of information from the divine, not just sending messages through prayer, but receiving. Right. And I talk a lot about that in the book because how do you know how you can help the world or what your path and purpose are if you're not allowing yourself to be guided by that divinity within you? So when you know and you have to practice and kind of test the boundaries and develop trust in it. When you know that's how you're guided, you know what direction to go on, and you don't have the fear that most of us get into. It's instinctual programming to fear what's new or different or outside of our comfort zone.
Right.
That goes away if you know you're being guided by divinity.
Mm-hmm. And the trust that you can develop, it almost, having been in that zone for a few decades now myself, to me, it's a no-brainer, right? There's a part of me I'm taken aback sometimes when I work with individuals who don't even know how to tap into that intuitive knowing, that listening. I call it heart wisdom. The divine downloads information in our heart, not our head, right? And so it always takes me aback when somebody doesn't really understand what I'm talking about. I'm talking gibberish to them when I'm talking about being clairvoyant or listening to your guides or whatever. But this is what, in your book, Hope for a New Era, this is what you're calling all of us to really listen to so that we can co-create the next leg of our humanity journey.
That's right. That's right. So there's been a lot of talk over the ages, actually in all the world's religions, and certainly if your audience is in the spiritual New Age space, they would have heard the term New Earth. Mm-hmm. Christians talk about paradise on earth. There's this idea of this beautiful time in the future that we're heading to, our next piece of our evolution. And the message that came through to me so clearly, this is our time. We're ready to evolve, but God's not going to deliver it. We have to co-create it. We have to be responsible, good stewards of the planet, and co-create our beautiful, bright future. And the only way, because, I think most of us, if you look at the big picture, can get really overwhelmed. The world, not to be Debbie Downer, but it's kind of a mess. you
It's a
know.
mess. No, let's just call it as it is, Cynthia. It's a mess.
It's at every level. There are things that need to be rebuilt. Everything from our school systems to our financial systems, everything needs an upgrade, a really powerful upgrade. So it can feel very overwhelming. And you get into inaction because you're overwhelmed. You don't know where to start. And so, if people only take one thing away from this conversation or even from the book, if they choose to read it, the idea is just tap into your divine wisdom and take one step at a time. Each and every one of us is here at this particular time in humanity's history for a reason. If you've been called to listen to this podcast, you are here to help the evolution, and it doesn't need to be on a grand global scale. If each and every one of us tunes in and leans into what we can do in our sphere of influence, we create that ripple effect that we've heard about, but we're not seeing right now. We create that ripple and we change the world and evolve to our next epoch, and probably the final one, because there won't be a need to go beyond that. That we'll continue to evolve our knowledge and technology and all of that, but we will have arrived with our raised consciousness, living in, what people in the Christian faith think of as the Garden of Eden. Your surroundings may not look different, or they might, but the energies will be different, and the frequencies that we're all at will be in resonance with love and joy rather than the really base negative frequencies that most of humanity is embroiled in right now.
Yes, they are embroiled in a low frequency vibration, which when your attention goes to that frequency, right? If you start paying attention to that, you'll be sucked down. And it is, I agree with you, Cynthia. It is, now is the time. I say this all the time on my show, but now is the time, because the lower frequency is almost like a cesspool that's going down a drain to me. And the higher frequency, like you were talking, raising your consciousness, really developing your inner guidance system that is source energy, divinity, whatever you want to call it, but is the whole reason why we're here. The whole reason to really develop that and follow that inner truth, not the outer truth that keeps the frequencies at a low vibration, but that inner truth that is raising us up into a new dimensional experience, a new intelligence, a way that we can you said upgrade all the systems. We can upgrade and or get rid of some of them and create something that we haven't seen before that is so much better, that does bring that peace and that hope, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Now is the time.
Now it,
Part of what's going to help with this is the expanding of the frequencies that are now available to humans, as well as the up-leveling of the frequencies of the planet. So a lot of the density, the trapped emotions that have been stuck in the collective consciousness are starting to dissipate. And that's going to help us lift our frequencies, because it's not just trying to focus on positive thoughts will not lift your frequency. It's more than that. And we need to be intentional about it, but it's absolutely available to everyone on the planet. And of course, a lot of people will choose not to go this route or be intentional about it. We need as many of the light leaders that you speak to, Susan, and everyone around the planet who hears this message. We need all of you to raise your frequency to your highest ascension point to help raise the average of the planet.
Yes.
So one of the precepts of the goal of the law of creation, the divine law of creation, which I mentioned in the book, is that besides the fact that we have to take action, one of the things is we have to be in resonance with the frequency of the goal, which I've been told the goal is at 200,000, which doesn't sound that high.
Are you talking about consciousness? People with that kind of consciousness?
Well, the frequency of their person, when you talk about someone having a vibe, a high vibe or a low vibe, their frequency, the higher it is, the more we can lift the average of the frequency on the planet to get to that 200,000. So we can be in alignment with the goal of creating the new earth. We'll get there, but I don't know about you. I'm thinking the sooner the better.
The sooner the better, because I'm that frog in the boiling pot, Cynthia, and I'm looking for the way out.
I said divinity's not going to deliver it to us, but they are here with us to guide us. And the sooner we can make this movement and raise our frequencies and start creating this world that's going to nurture humanity and love and take care of our fellow humans rather than just be embroiled in greed and self-serving, materialism. And there's nothing wrong with material things. I'm not saying that, but we see it around us. Or in the news, there is a lot of self-serving people with a whole lot of money that could do a whole lot of good in the world instead of, well, anyway, you get the point. And so we need more of us to be in this process of raising frequencies and tapping into our divine wisdom, and then taking those steps, whatever we're led to do. Again, it doesn't have to be on the global stage, something really big.
Right.
We all have influence and make a difference in other people's lives.
Huh.
And that influence could be convincing our family. Sometimes that's harder than strangers, but, talking to our family and friends about this journey we're on and saving the planet from global warming, which is another theme in the book, because we have to be good stewards of the earth. We're not taking care of it.
Yeah. So this speaks to me of what you said earlier about upgrading all the systems.
Mm-hmm.
So upgrading how we view the planet and the areas that need our attention immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then upgrading how we assist there, because we really are assisting on planet Earth. We don't have dominion over the earth, which is a falsehood that a lot of humans were fed very, very, very early on, centuries ago, that we're the top dog, and we're not. We're just part of the co-creation process.
Yeah. So we need to be responsible for what we've been given, that we are just passing through. We need to steward. I mean, we do have the highest intellect, and we do have this divine consciousness that we are able to connect with and be guided by. So we are in a unique position to take care of the rest of the planet, the animals and nature, and nurture it and make sure with our advancing technologies, we don't do stupid things, and sometimes it's not even intentional, but we go running into new technology, not knowing the repercussions, not
Right.
doing enough testing.
Right.
And we need to be intentional, because with this great knowledge and advancing wisdom that's just going to get more and more and more, there's no stopping it, because we're creative beings. We love to have goals and make new things. It's part of our nature, how we were made in God's image. That's one piece of that. We have an urge to create and continue expanding. So that'll continue. And as that does, we have to be really careful and intentional about the repercussions that we may create with what we do.
Yes. And we've seen that in the 20th century. We saw the creation of all sorts of technology, and we saw the potential destruction patterns that technology has, as well as the opening up new avenues of how to live and communicate and all that on the planet. But with knowledge, there is huge responsibility. Somebody said that. Maybe it was in Spider-Man. I don't know. But it's true, because as we learn and grow and evolve, there is more responsibility that we have to pay attention to, and stewardship, like you talk about in your book.
And that's one of the pieces that is really, truly missing right now. It's like letting loose children in a candy store. And we don't have a budget. We just go. That's what it's been like. It's a feeding frenzy, because we can, and we need to put the reins on and pay attention to the devastation we're creating now, that we're experiencing now, not just for our future or lack thereof, the way we're going.
Cynthia, as you say that, I don't even know how to say this out loud. What you're talking about children being let loose in a candy store and them just grabbing whatever they want and trampling over people because they want the other thing on the other side of the store, whatever that is such a beyond my comprehension. I don't even understand where oh my gosh, I don't understand where people live that trampling over others, grabbing for yourself, and I know it comes from a sense of lack and poverty, but and even the billionaires have poverty consciousness, right? Because look at what they're doing right now.
I do.
So my question is coming, how do we not counteract? Because if we counteract, then there's a push and an againstness that it clearly doesn't work. But how do we get to dealing with this kind of mentality and low level frequency?
Well, we have to focus on what we have control over. And, for those of us that aren't in politics or pulled toward advocacy, let's say, and really getting into the nitty-gritty of a particular situation, what we have control over is ourselves, and then our sphere of influence. So starting with us and leading by example, going back to your speaking of light leaders, leading with your light, leading as a conscious leader, doing what's right rather than what's most convenient. I think another topic, I think it was this book, I have it in there, is this idea of tough love sometimes. Again, an analogy of parenthood. It's easiest, if for the short term, to give the child exactly what they want. Ice cream for breakfast? Sure, I don't want an argument right now. And I feel like some of that has been going on around the world with our governments. It's easiest because of the blowback they don't want, to just continue as we are and continue killing the planet I mean, there's a lot of money involved and they may have financial incentives as well. A lot of them do. But there's also this, well, it's so hard to do the right thing. It's easier to listen to this narrative over here that says I don't have to worry about it because it's hard. And what we need really is that ethical leadership that's going to do what's right, even if it's not the easiest path.
Right. They've let the kids run amok so long that there is no one to really stand up and contain them. And this
Right.
to a level of personal integrity. This is my daily do, Cynthia. When people are out of integrity, it looks like what we're experiencing right now. And integrity, the best definition I found was Pierre Pradevant in his book, The Gentle Art of Blessing. He says integrity is standing in your truth and speaking your truth to authority. And that's what we're calling. That's part of leadership. It's in your book you talk about leadership being heart-centered and compassionate and egoless, as much as a human being can get out of their own ego way,
Right.
so that you can listen. And you talk about being able to listen to new possibilities without jumping in and saying why you can't do it, but just listen and sit with it. And that caught me, that one sentence: listening and sitting with it, allowing, not making a decision.
Right. I'm so glad you brought that up because I think, didn't you say shifting perspectives was one of your themes this month? We can't have progress when there's no diversity of perspectives. If we all think alike and are happy just status quo, there's never progress. And yet we know things are always changing. We're just not doing our best to direct the changes.
Right.
We're letting it happen to us instead of guiding it to be for us.
Right.
So just being open, I think I say that at the beginning of my book as well, because I'm sure I share things that people have never heard before. They may think is a little wacky or it doesn't align right out of the gate, perhaps, especially if I use a word that they're not used to using, because of their religious background or whatever. But if you just read it and allow it to be as a different perspective, when you learn to tap into your inner knowing and then go sit with it, it will tell you, it'll resonate as truth, but being open to the fact that no one has all the answers and our perspectives are just perspectives and there's always 5 or 6 other perspectives. And that diversity of thought is what makes the fabric of humanity so rich. We're all more alike than we're different, but when you embrace that diversity, instead of getting into this tribalism, nationalism, and all the other isms, the religious rightness and everything that we see going on in the world, if instead you embrace the fact that it's okay, I don't have to agree with them, but let me try and understand them by hearing why they believe or what they believe, just to understand them so we can have a conversation.
Right. And not to change them, but just to listen and attempt to understand. That's a big step towards unity consciousness, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. And that builds compassion. And that's how we come around to these solutions that didn't come from one person. They come from meshing 5 or 6 ideas together. Those are the best solutions that we come up with together. So everyone has buy-in and a desire to move forward with them.
Right. And then there's a co-creation of a synergistic new way that it took that many people to kind of co-create and go, oh, we could do it in a completely different way. Boy, Cynthia, I have to say, I have to own it. I'm of a certain age, and it certainly took me this long to finally go, oh, I'm not the one that has to be right. I can't control anything. Everybody has a different perspective, and even if it's 1 degree different from mine, there is a gift in that perspective. And like you said earlier, the diversity of perspectives is why we're here. It's why we're here. It is to listen to each other and really grow from that, not defend our position or our village, like you said, the tribalism, but grow from listening. It expands my consciousness when I listen more.
Mhm. Absolutely, because and just understanding we don't have all the answers or know, and it just opens up the door. And here's another trick I pass on to my students. When you're talking about tapping into your divinity, your inner wisdom, the truth is there. Like that's the truth you want to believe. But you only get answers to the questions you ask. So if you are so um, blinded, if you have the blinders on to your own perspective and beliefs, you're not going to even think to ask a different question.
No, you aren't. That's really true. That's true, Cynthia. Yeah.
And I'm sure you found, Susan, that, as you've developed your intuitive knowing, if you don't ask the questions, you could go years without, finally recognizing, oh, wait a minute, this is how I developed my claircognizance so quickly. I asked so many questions. I was just so curious and excited that I could get answers this way. But if you don't ask, I can remember distinctly a few times I didn't ask, I assumed, or I asked the wrong question. And, we only get what we ask for. People will say, well, if divinity's guiding us, why don't we already have these solutions to have a green economy, green ways of operating, better ways anyway, because we seem to be really struggling with that. There haven't been enough people recognizing the need, because when you recognize the need, you start asking the questions, and that's when those divine downloads come in.
Right.
And there's not enough people, or perhaps it's the right people, looking for those answers yet. They're there. The technology is there, or perhaps it's been developed, but it's currently too expensive and people aren't implementing it. But the ideas come when we start to ask different questions.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree. So, as you were also saying that, Cynthia, about coming to your claircognizance so quickly, did you do meditation or journaling? I mean, what are a couple of steps for listeners if they're curious? How do I develop that?
Well, so I have a little cheat to share. And hopefully in your notes or something you can share my website, because I have some other resources on this.
Absolutely.
But this is so easy and available to everyone, and almost nobody uses it the way I did, and it was so easy. So many people have heard of kinesiology, and some people use it in, especially in different fields like energy healing. That's where I first came across it. But specifically, there's one technique called the sway test, where you use your body like a pendulum. And by the way, don't use a pendulum for this. Don't use any of the other kinesiology techniques. Just the sway technique, which is where, to really simply recap, you set the intention to tap into your divine aspect or higher consciousness. Then you tell your body or ask higher consciousness you want to go forward for a yes or backward for a no, and then you make a statement or ask your question. Statements are actually easier to start with, and then test it and get comfortable with it. I always say start with your name. My name is Cynthia Rivard, and I'll get a forward sway. My name is Mickey Mouse. I should get a backward sway. Test it, play with it. And so this is, I didn't know it at the time, this is clairsentience. You're developing clairsentience. And I got to the point, I asked so many questions where I didn't have to stand up to sway. I didn't have to actually get a sway. I'd just get a sensation in my body. But I asked so many questions, and eventually, and as your frequency rises, you're more and more easily connecting with divinity because they're at a much higher frequency. So it gets easier as your frequency rises as well. But I started, my claircognizance was coming in very strongly, but I doubted it like a lot of people do. I second guessed it, but I'd already developed this cheat technique with the clairsentience. So I started validating everything I thought I was getting
Oh, that's a great idea right there.
because I knew very clearly I'd get that feeling if it was true and I needed to pursue it. And, some of the stuff I was getting was pretty out there. And so I'd say, well, I don't want to go down that road. Maybe I'm making it up. So I would validate, and it worked like a charm. And over time, of course, you get more confident and trusting that it really is your claircognizance, and then you don't have to validate it as much.
I love that. That's a great tool. That is a great tool. I'm gonna start teaching some of my students that way because I like I said earlier, I've been doing this so long that I get energy jolts. Some people say it's chills, but I'll get energy jolts running through my meridians when somebody's speaking truth. And so I know if it's coming out of me, I'm speaking truth when I feel that I'm in that electric alignment, but also when somebody's speaking to me and I can discern if it's true or if it's not. And if it's not for me, there's no energy. If it's true, I get tingles and all that stuff.
Right.
But that's my validation piece but that's also because I've been doing it so long. So one of the things you say in your book is your subconscious or this divine intuitiveness never works against you. That's also something to help individuals begin to trust when they're getting their inner guidance. It doesn't work against you because it wants you to be safe. It wants you to know that you're loved, things like that.
So let me clarify that just a little bit. So that is when I'm talking about the subconscious rather than our higher consciousness and tapping into divinity. Our subconscious really, it makes up the majority of what we do, all of our habits, our habitual ways of doing everything. And it's our subconscious that creates the resistance when we're trying to consider, when we're considering new or different things, kind of scary things. That's coming from the subconscious.
And that's the part that ignites the fight or flight.
Yes, exactly. And just know your subconscious is just trying to keep you safe. That's its job. It's working for you, but it doesn't recognize what you do, that it would be safe. Or, you know what I mean? So I think in that paragraph, I'm probably talking about doing your due diligence and then reassuring your subconscious that you're safe and you'll continue to be safe and you can step past this resistance. Usually it's easiest to pick a really small step first, so there's not as much resistance, but you can convince your subconscious that, no, I really am safe once you recognize there's resistance there. Sometimes we don't recognize it. We just find ourselves too busy or missing appointments or, things coming up that we don't recognize as resistance when in fact it is resistance.
Oh, see, thank you for clarifying that. And it's so interesting to me that I flipped it into the intuitive being the place where I guess that's where I reside anyway.
Well, and you, because you have that connection already and you know you're being guided,
Yeah.
you've already worked past a lot of that resistance that most people experience when they're trying to figure it out and they don't want to step out of their comfort zone. So that's a step you're past. But big
But, yeah.
but it's really helpful to recognize because most of the world's still struggling with this space and not trusting their guidance,
Right.
their subconscious will try and keep them in their comfort zone.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. So now, Cynthia, you work with groups and clients. You want to speak a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, if I could share a little bit, the way I would love to connect with anyone who's interested is through, actually, I have links on my main author site. So I'll just say cynthiarivard.com. I have the book there and a link to the nonprofit that I started. But through the nonprofit, anyone that makes a donation, even a one-time $5 donation, comes into our donor community, and there they get twice a month live group coaching and energy calls. We have all kinds of resources. I've got a mini course I just created on manifesting. We have all kinds of resources. The mission of the nonprofit is to raise human consciousness and assist in creating the identity of being a good earth steward, because the proceeds all go to other charities that are working to end global warming.
I love that. I love it. What's the name of the nonprofit, Cynthia?
It's called the Global Rising Tide Foundation. It's globalrisingtide.org, but there's a link on my main website as well.
We'll have in the show notes.
Yes. And I have a bunch of free resources that you can take a look at. On frequencies, I have a frequency chart that you might want to grab so you can measure your frequency and know where you're at. And because it's a starting place. If you want to raise your frequency, you need to know where you're starting and be intentional and know that it's continuing to rise.
I love that. I thank you so much for doing that for all of humanity, creating all of this. So the current book, you guys, because there's another coming hard on the heels of this one. The current book is Hope for a New Era, Turning the Tide, Love and Leadership Through Turbulent Times. This is, you guys, I got chills, Cynthia. This is a really good reference. There's so many things in here I circled, I earmarked, that just for me to like open up and go, oh yeah, that's right. I need to have this uplift, and this is a hope for a new era. Cynthia Rivard, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to having you back when the next book launches.
Fabulous. Oh, I love that. Really enjoyed conversation going. Oh yeah, really enjoyed our chat. Thank you for having me, Susan.
Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to you for developing your inner wisdom and your clairvoyance, your clairsentientness, so that you can be one of those light leaders that brings us into that new era with more hope, more faith, more joy, more love. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And I'm just going to end with, and so it is, namaste.
Well, that wraps up our empowering chat for the day. I hope you enjoyed it and found it inspired you to be more empowered. If you want to find out more about me, go to susanburrell.com.
my website and you can see what we're up to. I am teaching classes again, so there's a calendar of that, and you can register. You can check out my book, Live an Empowered Life, a 30-day journey with the companion inspiration cards, or you can access my guided meditations that go through Insight Timer. We got a bunch of stuff on the website. Check it out. And until then, namaste.